When Trump is awake, he seems to be unraveling. Republicans could hardly be less enthusiastic about being Republicans right now, and Democrats are ready to vote as soon as possible. Trump and Hegseth are trying to defend war crimes while also distancing themselves from war crimes. Trump's approach to pardons seems to be about finding the most powerful bad people, probably taking some money from them, I'm just guessing, and then pardoning them. Then we'll talk to a former terrorism prosecutor who was a lawyer for ICE at one point about immigration. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Trump posted 160 times on Monday night to Truth Social, and these weren't posts meant to inform the public about public policy. They were probably a close approximation to if you have any unhinged relatives and uncles, maybe 1% of what they would do in a week, he did in a few hour span. And then he showed up to work, Jason, the next day, and here's what he looked like.
War started, it never would have happened if you'd been president. But this war is going on, and the president is trying to end it, not because, listen, we got a million things to focus on in the world as a country, but he's the only leader in the world that can help end it. And that's why even as we speak to you now, Steve Woodcock is in Moscow trying to find a way to end this war, to save lives of 9,000 people, Mr. President, as you know, are dying every week. More people.
So for folks in the audio audience, Trump is sitting next to Rubio at this cabinet meeting. And in a normal week, if there were less news, we could talk about this cabinet meeting, which was more sort of Baghdad bobbing and Pyongyang style, cheering on the dear leader. But he's next to Rubio sleeping, I guess. And there's like a lot of clips like this.
Well, let's actually dig into this, because every few weeks there's a Trump fell asleep in the Oval Office. Trump fell asleep at this church service. Trump fell asleep, in this cabinet meeting. And if I'm being honest, I know this is not what people want to hear. Personally, I haven't seen anything that looked like he actually fell asleep. I've seen sleepy, and I've seen deeply disinterested. I've seen bored to the point of near unconsciousness. But to me, as look, between anybody who went to college or high school, or like for me, there were lots of times in the Army where I was exhausted and I had to sit and listen to people. I know what it's like to fall asleep in public. Your head drifts and you have to catch yourself. I have not seen him do that yet. Just keeping it real. People don't want to hear that. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just how he's presenting himself. Like, it's like, did he sleep? Is he just really tired and not paying attention? Either way, we have a guy, you have a combination of spending insane amounts of time online, shit posting, and then showing up to work and not putting his best foot forward pretty consistently. And he's 79 years old. He turns 80 this year. And I think it's important to keep asking the question, like, is this guy fit for office? There's a lot of reasons to ask that question. I think it's not just his age. I think it's a combination of his age and his lack of any sense of discipline or direction is combining to create a pretty toxic brew. Now, this cabinet meeting, there was just to give you one example of what happened in this cabinet meeting. I'm sure you've seen this clip where Kristi Noem thanks him for ensuring that no hurricanes hit us this season.
I didn't see that. No.
Yeah. So that's the kind of, it's like a caricature at this point.
Well, it's funny to me because, one, look, we obviously have an answer to the question of, is this guy fit for office? No, he's not fit for office, but for all sorts of reasons that don't have to do even with his physical health. But on top of that, the dude is like, yeah, I got an MRI. I don't know which part of my body. I'm sorry. I've had a few MRIs. I bet you have too. I've never not known what they were taking an MRI of, because whatever it is, you got to put that body part into the thing. Like, so put that aside for a minute.
And apparently his physician, I forget what the readout was, but gave like a body fat percentage, like a readout that basically would imply that Trump is more fit than DK Metcalf, who, if you're a listener, you don't know who that is like the most fit football player in the NFL, who's a guy who's like 6'6" and strictly muscle. So, I mean, this is where we are. I think the way to talk about this, I know that we're in holiday season and we can mix in conversations about how to talk to relatives, but the way I think you talk about this, it's like, yes, like we want to be consistent with the way we talked about Biden, and longtime listeners know I was pretty hard on Biden about his age. Yes, sure. Like there's a consistency part of it, but I also think it's important to say this is different. Like, we don't need to say it's like Biden, because Biden had he was older, yes, and it manifested in certain ways. I actually think Trump's is more dangerous because he's sleepy, he's tired, he's unfocused, but you combine it with all of the lack of inhibition that he has even when he was healthy. And that creates there's the sleepy old person, and then there's the erratic, aggressive old person. And I actually think Trump is the latter. I think that's way worse.
I agree. Part of the reason he's so tired all the time is because he watches 6 hours of television a day. And as somebody who has a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old, I can tell you that the days where they don't get screen time, they're a lot more pleasant to be around. They do a lot better job on their homework. They're way more focused. They get their chores done. Human beings are built that way.
Right.
Our president, it feels weird to say that, the president of the United States is getting too much screen time. And somebody needs to peel back, because also, by the way, what he's seeing on his screens is continuously reaffirming the poison that has already been injected into his brain and into his thinking over the last several years by right-wing media. And it's just bad, man. It just, yeah. Anyway,
it's just bad. I feel like we should save that as the button I push for the rest of this.
It's just bad, man.
It's just bad, man. Okay, the big news of the week, really. I mean, there's a lot of important news this week, but I would say what most people have, top of the chyron, I guess, is this. I'm using the term because it's what people are calling it. I don't like this term, but the double tap scandal, they're calling it. I for many reasons, I think double tap is understating what happened here. But I would imagine most people are familiar with this, but essentially it came out that the administration and the Pentagon had a second strike on a boat after they'd killed most people on it, coming from, I guess, Venezuela. And then they killed all the remaining survivors who posed no threat to the United States. Hegseth has been in the hot seat, and he was next to Trump earlier this week, and this is the explanation he gave.
Watch that first strike live. As you can imagine, at the Department of War, we got a lot of things to do. So I didn't stick around for the hour and 2 hours, whatever, where all the sensitive site exploitation digitally occurs. So I moved on to my next meeting. A couple of hours later, I learned that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do, and by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back, and the American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water and eventually on land if necessary to the American people. We will eliminate that threat, and we're proud to do it.
So you didn't see any survivors, to be clear, after that first strike?
I did not personally see survivors, but I stand, because the thing was on fire. It was exploded in fire, smoke, you can't see anything, you got digital. This is called the fog of war. This is what you in the press don't understand. You sit in your air-conditioned offices or up on Capitol Hill and you nitpick.
We can move forward.
Plant fake stories in the Washington Post about kill everybody, phrases on anonymous.
Do you want me to just, I have lots to say about this.
Well, let me lay on some facts quickly just for the audience, and then I would love for you to riff on this. But according to Haley Britsky, CNN's Pentagon reporter, the day after the September 2nd strike, Hegseth said he'd watched the operation live. And as you could see in this clip, he's now saying he only watched the first strike live before going to other meetings. The day of the strike, and this is also from Haley, Rubio said drugs on board the boat were probably heading for Trinidad. The next day, he said the boat was headed towards the U.S. So we've got some inconsistencies there. You now see in the clip, but also there was a tweet from Hegseth in which he said, "Let's make one thing crystal clear. Admiral Mitch Bradley is an American hero, a true professional, has my 100% support. I stand by him and the combat decisions he made." And Brit Hume, not exactly a liberal, tweeted, this is how to point the finger at someone while pretending to support him. So obviously, this administration that loves the military, in addition to stealing their housing, is and pushing them to make illegal orders, is throwing them under the bus after they follow their direction.
Okay, buckle up. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Okay, first of all, I think Rubio's first blush response to this, saying that the boat was going to Trinidad, is almost certainly correct. When you actually look at the map of where the strike took place, it's like on the tip of Venezuela, right between it and Trinidad. It's not headed north. Like, I think almost certainly this boat was not headed for the United States. Not that that entirely matters, for reasons I'll get into in a moment. Hegseth likes to throw around military terms that he thinks will impress and bewitch civilians and media that's never been in the military, like sensitive site exploitation. He said, well, there was all this sensitive site exploitation to be done. And then he says digitally to cover himself. Let me tell you what SSE is. SSE is going in and gathering intelligence from a site. So a good example of this on film, for instance, is if anybody has ever seen Zero Dark 30, they conduct the raid, they kill bin Laden, and then before they leave, they go through and they grab every, from floppy disks to computers, whatever is in that location back in 2011, they're grabbing it and they're throwing it into bags and they're taking it out. That's sensitive site exploitation. It's gathering up all the intelligence available at a site before you leave. When he throws in the word digital, what he means is, like, they looked at it from the sky in their either manned or unmanned aircraft that was filming the strike. That's not sensitive site exploitation. It is an excuse he is making up for why there was lots of stuff that had to be done. And it's just a buzzword he's thrown out there to distract. Now, another thing that I noticed, I tried like crazy to find out what time this strike happened. And ultimately what I found is that the Pentagon has so far been unwilling to actually say what time the strike occurred. And I think the reason for that, in part, is because Hegseth's thing about I had other meetings to go to. I mean,
you could check his schedule,
right? And all we've been able to learn is there's been a reference to the idea that this was in the very early hours of the morning, which means this may have been at like 3 or 4 in the morning. So you want me to believe that you came into the Pentagon at 3 or 4 in the morning and couldn't watch the entire operation in retrospect because you had other meetings to go to? I don't think so. He's obviously trying to distance himself from it because there's 2 major questions here that, when you answer them, make this a crime. The first is, we're not at war with Venezuela. All right. You can claim all you want that you've identified these groups as terrorist groups and then that you're at war with them. That's fine, I guess, except you have no proof whatsoever that that's who was on these boats at all. So that makes it very possibly murder. If you do accept the idea that these were combatants because you accept the premise that this is war, well, then killing people who are survivors of an attack, who are defenseless, is a war crime. In fact, if you look at the literature on this from the U.S. military, the example that it cites is attacking someone who is shipwrecked. It's literally the legal example provided in literature about the UCMJ. Finally, like, him saying fog of war is, again, him trying to use trying to use fancy terminology. I'm sorry, telling the media you don't understand because you've been in your air-conditioned offices. The person who conducted the strike, if this was not a manned craft, which I don't think it was also no shade to them, but this was not fog of war. This is one boat in the ocean with a massive military able to take it out. And finally, I have a theory for you, Robbie, and that theory is this, is that the reason that, and I've not talked to Mark Kelly about this, to be fair, but I believe that what happened is that Senator Kelly and others probably got word, very possibly from the Southcom commander who stepped down, prior to this strike, about what sort of thing they were fixing to start ordering, what kind of illegal orders. I think that the videos that Kelly and others made were partially prompted by the expectation of these sort of orders being given. And I also happen to think, like, it's entirely possible that Southcom commander talked to certain people. I mean, if you look at his rank and his glide path, maybe he and Mark Kelly know each other. Like, I'm not trying to get that guy in any trouble, but I think that there were conversations that happened prior to this event that had folks in Congress under the correct impression that illegal orders were about to be given in the ocean outside of Venezuela, and I think that's what happened here.
Well, they undermine their own project of trying to turn the Pentagon and the executive branch into this monarchy or authoritarian extension of Trump, right? Because what happens here is, if you really wanted the people in the rank and file of the Pentagon to follow your illegal orders, you need to show them that you're going to back them up when they follow those orders.
Right.
And what they've done here is signal to every single person that, hey, you follow this order, you're on your own. Which I think is obviously evidence of their cowardice, but also evidence of their short-term thinking on this.
Right. And also, I do believe the reporting that his order was kill them all. Like, I don't, if it is true that he had a SEAL team at his disposal, I see no reason. There is no tactical advantage whatsoever to firing the second strike and sinking the boat entirely. There's no advantage. If you believe that this is a tactic of your quote unquote enemy to take this route, you want to capture one or two of these people.
Well, we know from our experience, when we do capture these people, we send them back. If they're terrorists, you would expect these people would be sitting in federal prisons and they would be marching them in front of committee, which, by the way, even if they could produce those people, which they haven't, finding any one of them is not enough justification to be shooting a boat like this out of the water, especially on a second strike. And even if they are drug smugglers coming to the U.S., like, let's say that's stipulated, we don't have the death penalty for that. And as we'll get to, this administration is a bit muddled on the question of how they feel about drugs entering this country. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's close a couple of things here. Rand Paul has been pretty good on this. He said yesterday they said absolutely Pete says he didn't do it, and then today they admit that he did it. You think there would be ramifications? Was he incompetent enough not to know that it happened, or was he lying yesterday? That's what he told Semaphore. Now go further, Rand Paul, and say that you want to, you regret your vote and that there will be consequences for this, and you won't vote on any future administration appointees until they do X, Y, and Z. That's what I would actually like to see. One other piece here, which is like how the right-wing media is reacting to this. Our gal, Megyn Kelly, had this to say.
So I really do kind of not only want to see them killed in the water, whether they're on the boat or in the water, but I'd really like to see them suffer. I would like Trump and Hegseth to make it last a long time so that they lose a limb and bleed out a little. Like, I'm really having a difficult time ginning up sympathy for these guys who 10 seconds earlier almost got taken out by the initial bomb, but because they managed to get ejected, a little too soon, had to be taken out in the water. I realize legally it may make a difference, but truly, Mark, this is a tough case to really gin up the sympathies of the American people.
Yeah. Legally, it may make a difference. She's a former prosecutor. She knows what difference it makes legally.
Yeah, I mean, this is what this is what I don't want to give her too much time, but obviously it's unhinged. It's crazy. This is just where we are.
We have been, other than the last couple of years, we have been actively at war for like a generation. And in those wars, we have been fighting not nation states. We have been fighting this asymmetrical, mostly insurgency sort of force, right? And we have forgotten that it is just as likely, if not more likely, and what we really have a strong military for the purpose of, is conventional wars. And in conventional wars, you are counting on the idea that if you behave by the proper ethical, moral laws of war, which you should do anyway, regardless, but you're counting on the idea that if you do enter a conventional fight, that your enemy will do the same. That's why these laws of war exist, so that if we do end up in a, God forbid, it seems to be something that they're trying to make happen soon, in a conventional war in a place like Venezuela, or if in a few years we end up in one with Russia or with China, if you continually refuse to follow the laws of war, then neither will your enemies. And then when you have your own soldiers who are defenseless and have been in a craft that has been totally disabled, Americans, they won't be taken prisoner. They'll be executed, and the answer will be because America doesn't follow these laws either. That there's a real consequence long term to this kind of thing beyond the fact that it's just a horrific way to represent the country.
Yeah, and I think like the obvious rejoinder people give is the whataboutism, right? And they pretend like, first of all, there's comparisons to bin Laden. I mean, let's just put that aside. That's insane. Like, there's not a single person listening to this podcast who can name any of the people on that boat. We knew who bin Laden was every day. He orchestrated the mass murder of thousands of Americans, and there was a obvious interagency process and bipartisan consensus that he needed to go down. Right?
You know what else, Ravi? You know what Obama didn't do? He didn't just bomb the building. Now, did Obama do that in other instances? Yes.
Yeah, the example I think is Anwar al-Awlaki, I think the guy's name is. Now, and here's another difference. I would just ask people questions. We'll be okay, like in most of these circumstances, if not every single one of them, we know what our objective is militarily. There's a war going on usually. There has been an interagency process where the person that we're going after has been determined to be a credible near-term threat to the United States, and that there are no other means to take that person out. And there's still a debate and controversy. Those are controversies. People debate those things. What we can't say about this incident is, what the hell are we doing in Venezuela? What's the goal here? Nobody knows, right? The justification they're trying to give is drugs in the same week that they pardon a guy who is moving tons of cocaine into the United States. So that justification seems weird. There hasn't been any debate or discussion in Congress. They haven't released any interagency consensus on what this boat was, who they were, and they went back and killed all the people who we again don't know their names, still don't know their names or who they were.
We don't have literally any evidence that this wasn't just some dudes on a boat.
And then you know what? When bin Laden was taken out and al-Awlaki, there wasn't a mad scramble to point the finger at other people. The adults in the room stood up and said, you know, you could disagree with this decision or not, but yeah, I made the order and I knew who it was. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, okay, so let's keep going here. I alluded to
Obama in all of those cases was like, I gave the order.
Right. So, okay, let's take an ad break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the pardons that I'm talking about. There's two of them actually this week that were really horrible. I'm sure there was more, but two that really stand out. We've also got the special election in Tennessee last night, and we're going to devote a lot of time to this National Guard shooting and the refugee debate that's been going on since that tragedy in DC last week when we get back. Have you ever found the perfect couch or lamp online and then the sticker shock reminds you it's out of reach for your budget? That's why I use dupe.com. It's simple. You just type dupe.com/before any product URL and Dupe instantly shows you similar and more affordable alternatives. Is perfect for finding the best deals for your holiday shopping. We're in that season now. And these aren't sketchy knockoffs. The truth is, most products you see online, from furniture to fashion to gadgets, are mass-produced in the same factories, and brands just slap on different labels and markups and Dupe surfaces those same prices, those same pieces for way less. So you're not overpaying just for a name. That $5,000 sofa, $1,200 designer handbag, or $800 statement light fixture you've been eyeing, Dupe finds them or something nearly identical for a fraction of the price. And it's no wonder that Dupe has gone viral on TikTok. Millions of people already use it to save thousands on furniture and decor, sometimes 60, 70, even 80% off. And here's the kicker. It's completely free. This holiday season, Dupe is giving away 1 million Dupe points, and you could turn those points straight into gift cards. And here's how it works. You earn Dupe points just by shopping with Dupe. No payment, no catch. Just search for the products you want, save money, and rack up points. Want even more? Share Dupe with your friends. They save, you earn extra points, and that means more gift cards for both of you. So for a limited time, the first 10,000 people who go to dupe.com/majority will get 500 Dupe points instantly. So let me say that again. The first 10,000 people who go to dupe.com/majority will get 500 Dupe points instantly, redeemable for gift cards, no catch. but spots are limited, so don't wait. So that's dupe.com/majority for 500 free dupe points today. Use your dupe points and gift cards to make the most of your holiday shopping. Go to dupe.com/majority.
Thinking of thoughtful gifts becomes tougher each year. Nutrafol makes it easy. It's thoughtful, practical, and meaningful. Healthy, stronger hair is a gift that keeps going long after the holiday season ends. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months. This holiday season, Nutrafol is the perfect gift for anyone on your list. Your mom or aunt going through menopause, a friend who just had a baby and is experiencing postpartum hair shedding, your husband or father who relies on his baseball hat to cover things up. See, mine's still good. Yourself or anyone looking to support their overall health. It's probably not something you've ever thought of as a gift, but trust me, they will be thanking you later. Gifting something that someone actually needs instead of another mug, gift card, or blanket is a thoughtful and impactful way to show you care this holiday season. You can feel great knowing Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF Contents certified, the gold standard in third-party certification. Give the gift of confidence this holiday season with Nutrafol. Whether you're treating yourself or someone on your list, visibly healthier, thicker hair is the gift that keeps on giving. Right now, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription plus free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and use promo code MAJORITY. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code MAJORITY for $10 off.
All right, Jason. Trump pardoned this gentleman, Juan Orlando Hernández, the former president of Honduras. This is just inexplicable. Apparently originates with Roger Stone somehow. I imagine there's money somewhere involved, but we don't have anything yet to confirm this. Like, by every available piece of evidence we have, this guy was a drug trafficker. Not in the, hey, I'm moving things on dinghy boats sort of way, but in the, I'm moving hundreds of tons into the United States kind of way. When the administration was pressed on this, they tried to claim it was a hit job by the Biden administration. I think the problem here is that one of the prosecutors who pushed this case is Emile Bove, who was a big Trump person who Trump nominated to the bench.
Ended up being Trump's lawyer.
Yeah, and nominated to the bench.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's no evidence that this guy is anything but a drug trafficker.
Right, exactly. Jeremy, I think we have a video actually of Trump talking about this.
It's so clear how you want to keep drugs out of the U.S. Can you explain more about why you can pardon a notorious drug trafficker?
Well, I don't know who you're talking about.
Juan Orlando Hernández.
Well, I was told, I was asked by Honduras, many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup. I don't mean Biden, but Biden didn't do it a lot. But it was the people that surround the resolute desk, surround Biden when he was there, which was about very little time. And the people of Honduras really thought he was set up, and it was a terrible thing. He was the president of the country, and they basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup. And I looked at the facts, and I agreed with them.
What evidence did you share that he was set up and that he wasn't?
Well, you take a look. I mean, they could say that you take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president and put him in jail for the rest of his life.
President, can I just clarify too?
That includes this country, okay? To be honest, I mean, if somebody does something wrong, you put the president of the country in jail. They said it was a Biden setup. It was a Biden administration setup. And you have a big race going on this week, next week. I think it's going to be a very important race. It'll be interesting to see Honduras. That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct, yes.
First of all, anytime somebody asks you about the drug trafficker, the huge drug trafficker you just pardoned, you're like, which one? That's kind of a thing. But look, there's a few things here. One, Trump just genuinely thinks that powerful people are more virtuous. And this guy was president of the country, so he shouldn't be in jail, period. And then, of course, he throws in there, I mean, like, including this country. Like, he doesn't want anybody putting him in jail, right? So, but to the point of the Piper tweet, it's very confusing which narco traffickers we kill and which ones we just let out of prison. Like, it doesn't actually make any sense at all.
Right. And, in this sort of slow trickle of Republicans starting to stick their nose out a little bit. Senator Cassidy tweeted, "Why would we pardon this guy and then go after Maduro for running drugs into the United States? Lock up every drug runner. Don't understand why he is being pardoned." No kidding. Trump also commuted the sentence of a private equity CEO this week, who, this is not just a random victimless crime. This is a guy who defrauded tons of people, 10,000 plus investors. Isaac Saul,
$1.6 billion.
right. He spent like 2 days in prison. I think somebody pointed out that he spent less time in prison than some people have been spent in jail for posting memes before due process takes its course. Isaac Saul runs the non-partisan news site Tangle, tweeted, "Trump just set free a private equity investor who scammed thousands of people in a $1.6 billion scheme, including farmers, veterans, teachers, nurses. This administration continues to egregiously bail out white-collar criminals who prey on everyday Americans." So obviously some egregious pardons. Let's talk the Tennessee special election quickly before we get to our guest. And, I've lived in this district. I ran a couple schools in this district. It is not a contiguous district. So if people were watching last night, you will notice that it's part of Nashville, but not all of Nashville, and then includes Williamson County, which is a red suburb. It's not a normal suburb. It's not like Montgomery County outside of Philly or whatever. This is a pretty red area. And then a bunch of rural counties. And so this is a product of gerrymandering. We lost this race, but we dramatically outperformed where Trump was previously. But again, it was actually our lowest clawback, as we want to call it, of any of the specials that we've seen this year. So it wasn't like this home run that we wanted it to be, but it's part of a trend of Trump doing poorly, Democrats doing better, could have done better. There's a debate online about, was this the right candidate or whatever. I think I don't think it's important to get into that. I think that's what primaries are for. And, this is the candidate who came out of the primary. And I think this gives us some hope to keep going and say that Trump is underperforming how he did in the presidential election, even when taking into account the low turnout nature of these specials.
Yeah, the bottom line is that if the midterms were held today, we almost certainly take the House, and we have a shot at the Senate, and we want to keep those conditions in place for the next year.
Well, we got to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the National Guard shooting in D.C. And the Trump administration's aggressive, shall we say, response to that, and how that could endanger a lot of allies of the United States and people who've stuck their neck out for our people. So we'll have a special guest when we get back.
You can't mute the world, but you can mute your stress, one gummy or soda at a time. IndiCloud is your online cannabis dispensary for quieting the noise. Gummies, curated flower, pre-rolls, and now zero sugar, zero calorie THC sodas. All federally legal THC, DEA certified, lab tested, shipped, discreet, because some headlines deserve to be ignored and some days deserve bubbles. The first time I tried IndiCloud, I realized silence is the best headline. So this is for when you've read enough breaking news for one lifetime. Sleep gummies that quiet the ticker, sparkling sodas that end the day early, and social blends that save Thanksgiving. This is how adults log off, mindfully and maybe with a little fizz. If you're 21 or older, visit indicloud.co and use code MAJORITY for 25% off plus free shipping. That's indicloud.co, code MAJORITY, 25% off, free shipping, and one less headline in your head. Enjoy responsibly, and thanks to IndiCloud for sponsoring today's much-needed quiet. Holiday season is here, and let's be real, the kitchen is where it all goes down. Big roasts, game day feasts, endless sides, and all those holiday desserts. And if your current pans panic at high heat or burn the gravy, it's time for an upgrade. Enter HexGlad, the cookware that's as serious about performance as you are about carving that holiday turkey. These pans give you the perfect sear, crazy durability, and easy cleanup without the babysitting. Stainless steel strength, toxin-free non-stick convenience, and yeah, they look damn good on the stovetop when the whole crew is over. HexClad's 6-piece and 12-piece sets are the ultimate gift for yourself, for the home chef in your life. Whether you're starting fresh or going big, these bundles cover every dish, every craving, and every holiday spread. Plus, every HexClad product comes with a lifetime warranty, so you're not just buying cookware, you're setting someone up for years of meals, memories, and celebrations. By the way, I used my Hexclad skillet this morning to make eggs for the whole family at breakfast, which is what I do every morning. And I always appreciate how it just slides right off of there. Hexclad's 6-piece set is the perfect starter bundle for any kitchen. It includes 3 of their most popular pans with matching lids, giving you everything you need to handle daily cooking with ease, from breakfast, like I said, to dinner. These pans deliver pro-level performance, effortless cleanup, and durability that lasts a lifetime. Hexclad's patented laser-etched hexagonal steel ridges boost your searing power. These are the best pans you'll ever own. This season, don't just shop for gifts. Give the upgrade every kitchen deserves. Visit hexclad.com and cook like a pro all holiday long. Treat yourself or give the gift of cookware that delivers for every meal, every gathering, every season. That's hexclad.com. Support the show and let them know we sent you. Okay, our guest who's joining us right now is Javad Kazali. Javad is the co-founder of Kazali Wersch, which is a St. Louis-based law firm that focuses on civil rights, immigration, and litigation. Soon after the September 11th attacks, Javad joined the Department of Justice, where he worked with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. For nearly a decade, he was assigned to the DOJ and then to ICE in the National Security Law Division. His expertise was using immigration laws to prosecute terrorists, terrorist financiers, and aliens engaged in espionage and other criminal acts. Javad has also been the lawyer for American Rescue Project. He is wearing the sweater right now, was our effort that, if people are familiar with it, that got a few thousand Afghan allies out of Afghanistan who the Taliban were looking for, and brought them and resettled them in the United States, people who had helped the U.S. in the past. So I asked Javad to come on and talk about this reaction by the White House to the National Guard shooting. And so, Javad, you want to just start by talking about what you know, because I know you put some in the notes about the shooter and what people should know in terms of not just thinking, oh, this is what Afghans are like in this country. Oh, you're on mute. Welcome to podcasting, Javad. Let's see if we can get it.
Yeah, apparently.
There you are.
See, I got this fancy microphone and thought it would
It's
work.
very nice.
Yeah, it doesn't, work. Let me switch back to it for 1 second. I think I fixed it.
No, you're good.
Good? No? Okay.
Yeah, just go.
Great. Okay, so back after Kabul fell, we, just like we've done in every other military action, we decided that there were people who had been helping U.S. troops for decades in Afghanistan, and that these people, their lives were in danger. They'd put their lives on the line, and we needed to get them out of the country. We moved about 190,000 people to America through Operation Allies Welcome. The person who's the shooter in this case, his name is Ramanullah Lakhanwal, and he came to the United States in September 2021. As a part of Operations Allies Welcomes. Now, Jason, you and I worked on this. We brought about 380 people to the United States through Albania that we smuggled out. We got them to Albania.
And then more later, yeah.
Yeah, but our initial group, and it took our people almost 2 years of sitting in Albania. I flew to Albania twice. I used to work at Homeland Security doing terrorism stuff. All of our people went through significant background checks. I think our people had 5, 6, 7 different interviews where Department of State flew out people, Homeland Security flew out people. They vetted all of these people. We even had a small number of people who didn't pass the vetting, who did not make it to America. So these are some of the most extensive checks. What we also know, so he was vetted and brought into America in 2021. In December of last year, during the Trump administration, he filed for asylum. So he filed for asylum, which is something you do after you get to America. So he entered as a parolee, filed for asylum in December 2024, and then the Trump administration granted his asylum application in April of 2025. So between December 2024 and April of 2025, he would have gone through a whole other just battery of background checks. And his asylum application was granted in April of 2025. And it makes sense because, after the shooting, a lot of information has now been released about him. The U.S. government has confirmed that he was embedded in a group called a Zero Unit, which is a paramilitary group connected to the CIA. There are non-governmental organizations who call these Zero Units kill squads. So there is a chance, and it seems fairly likely, that he was working with the U.S. military, killing Taliban fighters in situations where it may have been illegal for America to do this, and he was doing this on their behalf. To do that, this is the highest level group of in-country people, so he would have gone through a battery of background checks. But here's the part that's even more disturbing about this, is that it seems like starting in January of 2024, after he came to America, he started having mental health issues. And
by this time, he's been in the country for over 2 years.
He's been here for over 2 years. Unfortunately, we've seen this happen, but not with refugees. We've seen there's studies out here that show that when our servicemen return to America and don't receive the support that they need, don't receive the mental health support that they need, these are people who spent their lives with guns, and they have a higher percentage chance of doing something bad. So he has been here. He's the only of the 190,000 people who've come here, person that I know of that has had anything like this happen. In fact, in September of 2025, we had 2 Marines, U.S.-born Marines, shoot up a diner and I believe it was a church in Michigan. So he'd been here, and you're right. 2 years after he was here, he started having mental health issues. And in America, when you have major mental health issues, you can still get a gun. So the idea that this has turned into an immigration issue, as opposed to a mental health, and more importantly, an access to gun issue for somebody who essentially was an American serviceman and we abandoned and didn't give proper care to, is shameful. And the Trump administration has now used this to basically shut down asylum for every single applicant, no matter what country you're from. My guess is they'll still let the white South Africans get their asylum applications. And let's go back to that. The white South Africans are the only group of people that I know of who've been brought to America as refugees who went through 0 background checks. I mean, those people, some of them were put on planes before they even knew that they had an application pending. No background checks for any of them. And the reaction has been twofold. Number one, they have stopped the processing of all asylum applications for anybody at all in America. And then there's a group of 19 countries, many of them that have nothing to do with terrorism. We're talking about countries like, I'll have the list here, but countries.
I'll read it. I'll read them: Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, the Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, and then there's limited access application to Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. And they're now saying, Javad, that being from one of these countries will count the same in your application as having a criminal record.
Well, there's one thing that unites all those countries.
They're not white.
Yes, not white. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't see a lot of SPF sold in those countries. You don't see a lot of, And I did counterterrorism with the Joint Terrorism Task Force for 10 years, right after 9/11. And I never had a case involving Chad. I never had a case involving Laos. I never had a case involving Togo. I never had a case involving half of these countries. And all of these countries are actually countries that in January of last year, Trump had already decided were on a bad list. So he just used this as an excuse to shut these down. He's currently focusing on Somalis because there's going to be a new operation in Minneapolis going after Somalis. And this is purely because Governor Walz put some tweets out there criticizing the president's mental health. and now we're going after them. I know of tons of people who are permanent residents of the United States, which means they've probably lived here for anywhere from 5 to 8 years, who passed all of their background checks. They have no criminal record, and they were scheduled to get their citizenship. They've been approved with their citizenship. They're just waiting to get the oath ceremony. And earlier this week, mass letters went out to them canceling their oath ceremonies. So these are people who have legal rights to be in the United States, and we've decided because of the color of their skin, we're not going to let them move forward anymore.
So this has created a permission structure, basically. This terrible, tragic event has created a permission structure for cracking down on immigration other than the typical immigration that that even people who voted for him thought he was talking about, which is immigration at the southern border. And so, Javad, I'm not even sure that I know of any instances of, and there must be some, but I have seen no instances other than this of Afghan refugees committing crimes, let alone an act of terror like this. Like maybe there are a few, but like your chart here talks about the actual differences that you gave us between like offending rates by citizenship or documentation status, and the group that is the least likely to commit by percentage is undocumented immigrants. The second least likely is documented immigrants, and then U.S. born citizens are far more likely to commit crimes than either group.
Yeah, I mean, with a population of 190,000 people, especially people who often have a hard time getting jobs, there's always going to be some crime. Crime is most tied not to race, not to religion, to poverty, correct, and to trauma.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about true violent acts, the things that the president is going out there and demagoguing, this population is the least likely to do it. And when I say the least likely, I'm talking about at a rate about 200% less than a natural born U.S. citizen. I mean, you really don't go more than a day or two in America without seeing a white male shooting up major areas. I mean, it took me 5 seconds to just type into Google veteran mass shooting, and it shot out 2 shootings on the same day in September 2025. And we would never go out and say we're banning all veterans. What we know is that we have populations that have put their lives on the line for America, to keep America safe, to keep America free. And that has major price to pay for these people, mentally, physically, years of their lives gone. And then we forget them. And that's what happened to this person. He came to the United States. This is actually the first time in my career, and I've been doing counterterrorism work. I first started doing it in 2022. So in 23 years, this is the first time in my career I've ever seen.
2002, you mean?
Yeah, 2002. You're right. This is the first time in my career I've ever seen the intelligence community immediately come out and say, yup, this is one of our guys. So that tells me not only was he doing a lot of stuff, that's telling me it's well documented, all the stuff that he was doing. And somehow or another, he comes into the United States and we lose track of him. And then when he's having problems, there's nobody there to help him. Something
happened with this guy. The point is, this dude did not come to the United States to do this.
No.
And an important point for those who are about to head into, Christmas dinners or whatever with family, and this is going to come up, an important thing that 2 dots that need to be connected here is that typically for new arrivals in the United States, refugees, folks that come over like this gentleman came over, through your resettlement agency, there is usually pretty rich access to services, mental health services, financial counseling, all sorts of stuff. But what most people don't know is that a huge amount of those of that funding, even though it's delivered through non-governmental organizations, is federal funding, and it comes from oftentimes USID. It is classified as foreign aid, but it's actually largely, but it's actually funding that is spent inside the United States by city, non-governmental organizations that work with refugees. That's the funding that would have made sure that this gentleman would have had access to mental health, would have had additional job training, that his family would have had additional English training, all of this sort of stuff that supports somebody to keep them from being so isolated. We're not removing the burden of guilt from this guy or the responsibility, but we also do recognize that there is some prevention to be done when it comes to crime and terrorism. And all of that funding was canceled within the first month of the Trump administration.
Yep. I'm on the board of the International Institute in St. Louis, which is our refugee resettlement organization. It's the largest, one of the oldest and largest refugee resettlement organizations in America. And our funding's been devastated, like every other group. We, at one point, laid off 60% of our staff that is specifically out there to support people like this. So, you know, I'm a realist. I understand that some things are inevitable. When you have a person that you have trained to be on a kill squad, who has been in his home country, who then need to evacuate his country because the moment that we left, he and his whole family would be executed. And then they come here and they're abandoned. And then they start showing mental health problems. And he was showing this since January of 2024. So we're talking about almost 2 years. And what does he get? Instead of getting help, instead of being treated like somebody who fought for America, what we did, because what's more important than that in America, is we gave him a gun. And then when he used the gun, all of us just did, you know, Pikachu face. Oh my God, I can't believe it happened. And unfortunately, things like this was foreseeable. The same way it would have been foreseeable if this was a Navy SEAL or the 2 Marines, you know, that shot up places in September. But this isn't about immigration. You know, the families that you and I helped bring over here, I'm looking at pictures of them playing baseball in their backyard. I mean, I see one of the families in, for any of you who've never spent time in Kansas City, you know, Jason will get you dressed up in Royals gear instantly. That's who I see. And then the part that's really frustrating for me is that this permission, as you said, you know, and what people were fighting for. You know, San Diego, there's been a big push recently where people are going into their final interviews to get their green cards. This is it. Everybody says, do it the legal way. These are doing it the legal way. And right before they can be granted it, their status, ICE is jumping into the interviews and arresting people. And they're not, you know, for anybody who's been in San Diego, there's a huge military population there. And they're going and they're grabbing people.
Including spouses of military personnel.
For sure. I have, you know, this very distinct memory of back when I was at ICE. And there was a case in which we had a soldier who was MIA in Iraq and was most likely killed in action, but we didn't know. He had an undocumented spouse. Now, there's a legal pathway very specifically in the law that was written to give priority to spouses of U.S. servicemen that allows them to legalize. And she was waiting for this to happen. And while we were trying to figure out where she was, ICE, and this was in the early 2000s, went and arrested her. And I remember being on a phone call with the head of ICE, sitting in the room as the attorney, when at that time, Senator John Kerry got on the phone. Senator John Kerry, who's a veteran. And for as kind of sterile and unexcitable as John Kerry is, I'd never heard a senator use such strong language. And he basically cursed us out and basically said, if he ever hears of us arresting the spouse of a person who's putting their life on the line, we'd be hearing from him. And now we're doing this daily. And when we go to ICE, we've been told we have a quota. And the idea that people voted so that we could have quotas where we're arresting spouses of service people, where we're arresting people at their hearings to become legal, especially when I always hear, well, all they have to do is just make themselves legal. That's what these people are doing. I have clients who have been here obeying the law, waiting for hearings, having hearings ready to go, and ICE is just picking them right now and putting them into detention, claiming they can't have bond, no criminal record. Why? Because they have quotas that they have to hit. And I openly admit it. The officers will tell me, Javad, I worked with you in the past. There's no reason I should be arresting this guy, but I got to get 16 of them this week. And your guy who's been obeying the law and showing up and giving me his address is the easiest guy for me to get because I know where he is.
Before we wrap this up, there are a lot of folks who listen to this who are invested in the kind of work that we have done to bring Afghan allies here. And I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to me saying, what's going to happen to the Afghans who are here? And you and I have talked, and I found it very reassuring. So will you talk through some of the, like, it's not like, hey, nothing is the matter and everything will be fine. But there, in terms of the people who are already here, there are reasons to still be confident that they at least shouldn't. And there's no indication that they're about to be sent out, regardless of what the president says. And will you walk through that a bit?
Yeah, so specifically for the Afghan population, okay, almost all of these people were invited into the country and entered the country legally. Thus, they have the right to be here. Most of them have either been granted refugee status or asylum status. They're basically the same thing. The main difference is asylum occurs when you're in America, which means that they're on the path to getting their green card. They're on the path to getting their citizenship. Some of them have already gotten their green card. Because of the timing of this, very few of them have gotten their citizenship. Now, my expectation is this is adding many unnecessary years to their process. This is making it so that they are still going to be treated as others. Now, they'll be here legally, they'll be able to work, but they're not going to be able to travel out of the country. They're always going to have this emotional trauma over them. And you and I have spoken to a lot of our people, and they believe us when we tell them, look, this is just going to make it harder, but we're still going to get to the finish line. But these are people who come from countries that are corrupt, countries where people can do whatever they want. And when they look at this president and this president saying the law doesn't matter to me, they're rightfully more than nervous. So the too long didn't read on this is, yes, eventually this is going to work out for them. It's going to be very stressful, but this is a terrible way to treat the people who fought for us and fought with us.
And what I would add, because there are those listening to this saying, hey, well, there are people who seem to have a legal status who are getting deported anyway to other places. And one of the important differences there is that they're being deported to places with which we have diplomatic relations. And what I've told people is, hey, I understand why you are worried, but until the United States, which, don't get me wrong, this could happen. Trump could do that. I mean, he's the kind of guy who could do this. Until Trump turns around and recognizes the Taliban as an official government that we have diplomatic relations with again, there's not logistically really a way to send people back to Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, he's always got the threat that I'll just send you to some other country.
Right.
Now there is a really weird thing that is happening here that I think should make us feel a little bit more comfortable. I think for immigrants writ large, this is a major problem. Trump has systematically been going through and firing immigration judges that he thinks are too liberal. And they're doing this through a math equation. They fired half the judges in San Francisco 2 weeks ago. They fired 8 judges in New York this week. And they're just doing it by looking and saying, well, I think this person is granting too much. And their goal now is to replace them, not with immigration judges, with people that they're calling deportation judges, which means it's kind of predetermined. But I think we're going to get a large number of these to be military judges, judge advocate generals, people who don't know immigration law And many of them will be doing what the Trump administration tells them to do about deporting people. But these are also going to be people who are intimately knowledgeable about how our Afghan population that is in the United States helped troops. A lot of these people will have served over in Afghanistan and will understand that this vilification is gross and racist. And so I'm hopeful that for the Afghan population, especially in front of, if they ever have to be in front of a military judge, we've got a much better chance.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm going to close this out with just a thought to remind everybody of, which is that the Afghans who worked with our forces and with our multilaterals and NGOs over there were the most industrious people and the most impressive and educated in Afghanistan. And then the ones who managed to find a way through connections with service members and others here, or through just pure outright industriousness, because they had to find a way out of the country when it was impossible, particularly those that got out after August of 2021. You're talking about the most resilient and most industrious of the most industrious. Yeah. And these are great people who are incredibly capable, who are going to be of great benefit to the country. And I just, as people go into the holidays and you talk about this, I want to make sure people are on message about that. So Javad, thanks for coming. You wanted to quickly promote Immigrants List before you go. So go ahead.
So I constantly get calls about, hey, we're getting all of this misinformation about immigration. We have people who are just making up stories about immigrants, talking about how terrible they are, not knowing the true facts, that to legalize it takes 24 years. And what we've noticed is that there's a major vacuum for the voice of reality when it comes to immigration. So I'm a part of an organization called Immigrants List. You can go to immigrantlist.org and you can donate. And what that helps us do is put out messaging about what is the truth about immigration, what's the truth about the law, how this administration is manipulating and lying about the law and lying about what's the reality of immigrants. So if you're really, I like to think of it as the Planned Parenthood of immigration. If you are passionate about making sure that immigrants are protected, if you are an immigrant, if you're married to an immigrant, have somebody in the family, will be really helpful. So go to immigrantlist.org. I think there's going to be a link in the description, and you can just click on there, donate. We use 100% of that money to just put out messaging about immigration.
Great. And the link is in the show description. So Javad, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks. Love to be back. And next time, I'll talk to Ravi.
Ravi was here. He was just enjoying it.
Well,
all right.
Couple quick plugs. I've got this writers group. I think I've mentioned it before, that I'm doing throughout 2026, and every Wednesday we're meeting, and I'm calling it the Analog Finishing School. It's all about for people who want to finish, whether it's a book, a screenplay, whatever. We're accepting applications through December 10th. So people can go to ravimgupta.com/analog. That's ravimgupta.com/analog for that. And then also I just did a year-end list of just all my favorite books, podcasts, movies, yada, yada, yada. And people can get that on my Substack at realravigupta.substack.com. And that is free. So people can check that out. But yeah, other than that, I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for my family last week, which was fun. It's the first time I've ever done anything like that at scale, trying to practice some of the skills I learned in Italy.
I was going to ask, how did it go?
I think it went pretty well. It's one of those things where it's like everybody's going to be polite. So if people didn't like it, I wouldn't necessarily hear it, but you just got to pick up things like, are people trying to bring the leftovers home and stuff like that, which they were, which I thought was a good sign. But then I'm practicing again this week. I'm doing a dinner for mostly people who've been supportive of the branch over the years. And we're doing a pop-up restaurant at Hodari's house. And,
that's cool.
And I'm doing that for 20. So that's going to be quite the experience. I'm doing that Friday. So
how'd you do the turkey? What was your
that was the one thing my mom did. Although I did a turkey bolognese as well to keep it with the turkey theme,
So Speaking of turkey, we did 2 Thanksgivings. My brother hosted, and it was great, and it was delicious. He smoked the turkey. It was I don't cook really other than breakfast, and so I went over, ate all that. It was great. And then a couple days later, we went over to our Afghan family's house and had what was basically a Thanksgiving meal. And what was interesting is at one point they brought out a turkey, and they had cooked it. And I asked them, I was like, "Have y'all ever had turkey?" They're like, "No, never." So they cooked a turkey. They'd never eaten it before. And then they said, "How do we cut this?" And I realized I've never carved a turkey. And I was like, I don't actually know. And so we all, when we eat, we all sit around, there's a big mat on the floor and we eat Afghan style. And so we actually passed the turkey around and pulled legs and stuff off of it and just pulled meat off of it like after a football game on Thanksgiving with the turducken. And it was just like eating and it was really good, but I just thought it was funny because I realized like, they thought I would know how to do this and I absolutely don't. So we just pulled at the turkey until it was gone. So anyway,
Oh my!
It was a good time. So
I mean, you could spend. Well, one thing for the audience as we're going. Today's Spotify Wrapped Day, or it would have been yesterday if you're listening to this on audio. And for a lot of you, you might have Majority 54 on your top 5, and they give you a little card to share. Share it. Tag me and Jason. We'll repost you. Which means more coming from Jason than from me because he has a lot more followers.
It means a lot either way. Hey, so, maybe we'll get my wife to do it, and then it's really a lot.
Yeah, she's got yes. And so so do that. It helps us. And for those of you listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, you can go to Majority 54 to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, and when you go and tag us on social, you'll do it at Jason Kander and at Ravi M. Gupta. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.